honored to be able to call the senator from the state of Illinois, our friend, and to be able to call him the next president of the United States.
Oh, this is a good-looking crowd here. Good-looking crowd here. I am glad to be in St. Louis. This is almost home.
Yeah.
This is almost home. I bet we got some Chicago folks in the house here. I figure we might have some Chicago folks studying down here.
Yeah.
I am so glad to see all of you. Let me just make sure that I acknowledge some of our key supporters in the state. Congressman Lacey Clay, give it up for Lacey Clay. Congressman Russ Carnahan, give it up for Russ Carnahan. The Missouri-Kansas State Council of SEIU. Auditor Susan Monteith. And Board of Aldermen President Lewis Reed. Yay. And all the rest of you who are out here. Give yourselves a big round of applause. Oh, I love you back. So, you know, I know it's a little chilly today, but you know, when we announced for president, it was 17 degrees below.
Yeah.
Getting hotter.
And it has now been 9 months since we announced. And everywhere we go, we've been seeing these enormous crowds like this. We've had 25,000 people in New York City, 20,000 people in Atlanta, Georgia, and 20,000 people in Austin, Texas, 15,000 people in Oakland, California. And what's inspiring is not just the size of the crowds, but it's the makeup of the crowds. Because they're people from all walks of life. We've got young people. And we've got some old people. Yay! See, I noticed the old people didn't admit they were old. Young people were all proud. They're all cheering. We have blacks, whites, Hispanics, Asians, Native Americans. We've got Democrats and independents. And we've even got some Republicans. I know this because when I shake hands afterwards, they whisper to me, they say, Barack, I'm a Republican, but I support you. And I say, thank you, but why are you whispering? Now, part of the reason that all of you are here, part of the reason that people are so engaged and excited about this campaign is because folks are sick and tired of George W. Bush. They are fed up. They are tired of an administration that treats our Constitution as a nuisance instead of the foundation of our liberties. They are tired of economic policies that only favor the wealthy. So that CEOs are making more in 10 minutes than ordinary workers are making in an entire year. Tax breaks going to folks who didn't even need them. When people are struggling to fill up the gas tank or save for their child's college education or save for their own retirement. People are sickened by the sight of our fellow citizens standing on rooftops after a storm because of an administration that's too indifferent or too incompetent to execute a rescue. They're tired of the lack of progress on critical issues like health care, on education, on energy. They're tired of a law called No Child Left Behind that left the money behind. They're tired of an anti-science administration that thinks that and won't support stem cell research. And most of all, they're tired of a war that should have never been authorized and should have never been waged, that has cost us $500 billion so far, and thousands of lives, and has not made us more safe, but has diminished our standing in the world. But that's not the only reason you're here. You're also here because you don't want to just be against something, you want to be for something. You want to affirm that we as Americans can still work together. That we're not just a collection of red states and blue states, that we are the United States of America, that we can rally around a common purpose, that we can rally around a common destiny. You believe that we can make things happen when we work together, and that's the reason I am running for president of the United States of America. It's not going to be enough just to change political parties. What you understand is we also have to change our politics. We got to change how business is done in Washington. You know, I'm amused when people start talking about, well, you should elect me because I know how to work the system. The system hasn't been working for us.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Woo.
Think about it. We've been talking about health care reform for decades now.
Yes.
Through Republican and Democratic administrations. And yet year after year after year after year, nothing happens except more and more people join the ranks of the uninsured. Premiums, co-payments going up. People can't pay their medical bills.
Woo! Right.
Why is that? Well, part of it is because we've got an administration that isn't interested, that vetoes S-chip that would provide health insurance for poor kids around the nation. But part of it is also because the insurance companies and the drug companies have spent $1 billion over the last decade preventing health care reform from happening. So if we're going to actually see health care reform, we've got to change how business is done in Washington. We've been talking about energy independence for decades now. I was going back looking at the old clips. They say every year presidents say the same thing at the State of the Union. I think it's time for us to free ourselves from dependence on foreign oil, blah, blah, blah. Nothing happens. The only thing that happens is our oil imports increase, gas prices increase, and the profits of ExxonMobil increase. Why is that? Well, it doesn't help when you put my cousin Dick Cheney in charge of energy policy. Man, we've been trying to hide that for a long time.
Yeah.
You know, everybody's got a crazy uncle in the attic. Got a black sheep in the family. But when he was in charge of energy policy, he met with the environmental groups once, he met with the renewable energy groups once, and then he met with the oil and gas companies 40 times. So it's not surprising that nothing's changed. But what's surprising is to think that we could actually change something without changing how politics is done, how lobbyists operate. You know, there's some in this campaign who say, elect me because I know how to play the game in Washington better. Well, let me tell you something. We don't need somebody who knows how to play the game better. We need somebody to put an end to the game playing. Because the times are too serious and the stakes are too high. That's why I'm running for President of the United States of America. To put an end to the game playing. You know, it's easier to understand what I'm talking about when you get outside of Washington. One of the best trips I've taken on this campaign is a trip I took out to Oakland. We woke up at 5 in the morning and we went over to the house of a home care worker named Pauline Beck, 61 years old, a member of the Service Employees International Union. That union, SEIU, had organized to have every presidential candidate walk in the shoes of one of their members for a day. That's why they're a great union, because they're thinking about their membership. So I woke up at 5 in the morning. I went over to Pauline's house. She was already fixing breakfast for a couple of foster kids who she's taken in because they don't have a family of their own. And then we went over to the home of an 86-year-old man named John Thornton, who's an amputee. And every single day, Pauline Beck goes over to his house and works the entire day helping him get his prosthetic leg on and change the soiled sheets and help him get into his wheelchair and fix him breakfast and scrub the floors and do the laundry. And so this morning I did that. My wife couldn't believe it. But we've got videotape. But listening to this humble woman talk about the hardships of her life without a trace of self-pity, just glad to be of some service to somebody, just hoping that maybe she could get a little more pay to look after those children, just hoping maybe she could have a little more security in her retirement, just hoping maybe she could get a day off once in a while to rest some weary feet. I was reminded of why I had gotten into politics and public service over 2 decades ago when I started working as a community organizer to help folks who had been laid off of steel plants, because all across the country there are millions of Pauline Becks. There are millions of people just like that right here in St. Louis, in Missouri, all across the country, working hard, looking after their families, doing the right thing. They don't expect government to solve all their problems. They're not looking for a handout. All they hope for is that they're able and willing to work hard. They should be able to find a job that pays a living wage.
Yeah.
They hope that they shouldn't be bankrupt when they get sick. That they should be able to send their child to a good school. They should be able to send that child to college even if they're not rich.
Yeah.
They should be able to save and have a little bit of money left over for a retirement of dignity and respect.
Right.
In other words, they're just looking for their little piece of the American dream. And what they understand is that government is not listening to them. They don't recognize that the American dream is slipping away from too many people.
Woo!
And that the values that we believe in as Americans, in opportunity and upward mobility, that I am my brother's keeper, I am my sister's keeper, I'm not in it on my own, we're all in it together. Those values have to express themselves in our government. That's why I'm running for the presidency of the United States of America. To install those values in Washington. Now when I talk like this, sometimes the folks in Washington, they roll their eyes. They say, oh, he's talking about hope again. He's so naive. He's a hope peddler. He's a hope monger. He can't accomplish all this stuff. Well, let me tell you something. I know that folks in Washington would like me to have been in Washington a little bit longer. They want me to stew. They want to season me a little bit so I think like everybody else and get cynical like everybody else and start playing politics like it's a game like everybody else and start listening to the polls like everybody else. But that's not what I'm interested in. I have to remind people that there are a couple guys named Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld who had two of the longest resumes in Washington and led us into the biggest foreign policy disaster of a generation. A long resume says nothing about good judgment.
That's right.
Longevity says nothing about your character.
Yeah.
And that's what this election is about, judgment and character. So let me tell you about my judgment and my character born of experience. I've got the experience of bringing Americans together to get things done. We got Democrats and Republicans working in Illinois to provide health insurance to everybody who needed it. We had the experience of getting law enforcement working with civil rights advocates to fix a death penalty system that was broken. I know how to get people to work together to get things done. I know how to take on the special interests, even when it's not popular. The first bill I passed, major bill I passed in Illinois, was to help get the money out of politics, help reduce the influence of lobbyists in Springfield. When I got to Washington, I did the same thing, passing some of the toughest ethics reform provisions since Watergate. And by the way, it was resisted not just by Republicans, but some of my Democratic colleagues, but we got it done anyway because it was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
I've got the experience of standing up even when it's not popular. Back in 2002, when the drums of war were beating and George Bush was at 65% in the polls, I was asked to attend an anti-war rally of about this size. And some people, some advisors, some friends, they said, Barack, don't go. Bush is popular, the war is popular. If you go, you might lose your U.S. Senate race. I said, I don't want to start my U.S. Senate race by biting my tongue and not standing up for what I believe in. And so I went to that rally, and I spoke out against what I considered a rash war, a war based on politics instead of reason, and our strategic security. And so those are the elements I think that the next president has to have. A willingness to stand up for what's right. A willingness to take on the special interests, an ability to bring the American people together across the divides of race and religion and region and partisanship. But there's one other thing that I think the next president has to have, and that's a little bit of impatience. The next president has to be angry a little bit that we haven't solved some of these problems that need to be solved. I don't accept that we can have 47 million people without health insurance in the wealthiest country on earth. I don't accept it. I know something about this. My mother died of cancer at the age of 53 years old. And in the last months of her life, she wasn't thinking about how to get well. She was reading insurance forms trying to figure out if she was going to have her coverage denied because she had just gotten a new job and they were saying it might be a pre-existing condition. So I know what it's like to see a loved one suffer, not just from an illness, but also from a broken healthcare system. And that's why, as president, I will make sure we will put forward a plan that provides health care for every single American that's as good as the health care I get as a member of Congress. And we are going to lower premiums for folks who already have health care. And we're not going to do it 20 years from now or 10 years from now. We're going to do it by the end of my first term as president of the United States of America. I don't accept that we can't provide a world-class education to every child in America. We know what to do. We know what to do. If we pay our teachers more and recruit an army of new teachers and give them better professional training and work with them instead of against them, then we can raise standards in our schools. If we invest in early childhood education, we can close the achievement gap. And as President of the United States, I am going to make certain that every young person in America can afford to go to college without $50,000 worth of debt? Because I want them serving as teachers. I want them serving as social workers and nurses and in the Peace Corps and in the State Department. I want to tap the talent that's represented in the young people who are here today. I don't believe that the American dream is a thing of the past. That's why we've got to make work pay. That's why we've got to raise the minimum wage not every 10 years, but every year. Make it a living wage. That's why we've got to strengthen unions, because they lift workers into the middle class. That's why we've got to stop giving tax breaks to companies that move jobs overseas and invest in companies that are doing the right thing right here in the United States of America. We can have an energy plan that makes sense. We still send $800 million a day to hostile nations, fueling the war on terrorism, melting the polar ice caps in the planet because of our dependence on foreign oil. I mean, if we just increase fuel efficiency standards on cars to 40 miles per gallon, we would save the equivalent of all the oil we import from the Persian Gulf. Imagine what that would do for our economy, what it would do for our environment, what it would do for our national security. Imagine. And by the way, when I proposed to do this, I didn't do it in front of some environmental group in California. I went to Detroit in front of the automakers. And I have to tell you, they were really quiet. Nobody cheered. But that's okay. Because part of what you need from the next president is somebody who's not just going to tell you what they think you want to hear, but tell you what you need to hear.
That's right.
Somebody who's going to tell the truth. That's what you need out of the president. Not somebody who's just going to put their finger out in the wind and see what's popular. Not just read the polls and do what the polls tell you, but somebody who's willing to do what's right and mobilize the American people to dream bigger dreams. Most of all, I don't accept that there's a conflict between our national security and our standing in the world. Those concepts aren't mutually contradictory. Those concepts are complementary. That's why we have to bring an end to this war. There are no military solutions to be had in Iraq.
That's right.
Our young men and women have performed valiantly, brilliantly. It is time to start bringing them home. We've got to bring them home as carefully as we were careless getting in. But we've got to start bringing them home and double down our diplomacy. And we've got to start now. We've got to put pressure on Republican senators and Republican congressmen who are still following George Bush's failed path. But let me tell you, if we can't get this war done by the time I take office, then I will bring it to an end as President of the United States of America. I will get our troops home. We'll stop spending $10 billion a month in Iraq that could be spent rebuilding St. Louis, constructing schools, providing health care, building infrastructure. But it is not enough just to change. It is not going to be enough just to end the war if we don't change the mindset that got us into war. We got to change the conventional thinking about our foreign policy. Now, I got in an argument with Senator Clinton about this because I said I will be willing to meet not just with our friends, but also with our enemies. You know, JFK once said, John F. Kennedy once said, we should never negotiate out of fear, but we should never fear to negotiate. Strong countries and strong presidents are not afraid to talk to their adversaries and tell them where America stands. And when we do that, we can win back the confidence of the world. I want to go before the United Nations General Assembly as president and say, America is back. America's back and we are ready to lead. But we are not. We're not just going to lead. We're not just going to lead militarily. Yes, we're going to get out of the wrong battlefield in Iraq and get on the right battlefield going after Al-Qaeda. Yes, we're going to lock down loose nuclear weapons that could fall into the hands of terrorists. But we're also going to work with the world to build schools all around the world that teach math and science instead of hatred of America.
Yeah!
We're also going to deal with HIV/AIDS in sub-Saharan Africa because it's the right thing to do. We're going to bring an end to the genocide in Darfur because we're not a nation that turns a blind eye to slaughter. And we are going to close Guantanamo and we're going to restore habeas corpus.
Yeah!
Because we are not a nation that locks people up without charging them. We're not a nation that ships people off in the dead of night to be tortured in other countries. That's not who we are. That's not what America is all about. We're a bright and shining light. We are the last best hope on earth. When we live up to our ideals, when we live up to our values. And that's what I want to restore as president. But I can't do it by myself. I can't do it by myself. Change in America never happens from the top down. Change happens from the bottom up. Change happens because all of you decide that change needs to happen. You know, I am reminded every single day of my life that I am not a perfect man. If I'm not reminded by events, then I'm reminded by my wife. I will not be a perfect president. But I can promise you this, I will always tell you what I think. I will always tell you where I stand. I will be honest with you about the challenges we face because some of them are going to be big and be difficult and will require sacrifice and courage. I will listen to you even when we disagree, and we're going to disagree sometimes. And most importantly, I will open up the doors of government back to you so you can get involved and be a part of your own self-government.
Yeah!
And if some of you doubt, if some of you doubt the power of your own convictions, your voice, just remember the insiders, the fat cats, the lobbyists, they are counting on you not being involved. They are counting on you turning away. So if you leave this rally just thinking, oh, well, I've done my bit, I came to a rally, I paid $25. No. You're just getting started. We need you to volunteer for this campaign. We need you to knock on doors. We need you to make phone calls. We need to send out email lists. We need you to text message. We need you to call your cousin Pookie. We need to get Uncle Jethro involved. We need to do everything we can to bring about the kinds of changes that the times demand. In other words, I'm not just asking you to trust in my ability to lead this country. I'm asking you to trust in yourselves. I want you to trust in us, our ability to bring about change. And if you don't believe in the power of your voice, let me just close by telling you a quick story about a trip I took to St. Louis. No, I'm in St. Louis, South Carolina. Trip I took to South Carolina this several months ago. South Carolina is an early state. I got to go down there quite a bit. I was down there for a legislative Black Caucus conference, and they had asked me to speak. And so before I got up to speak, I was sitting next to a state representative, and I wanted that state representative's endorsement. So I said, State Representative, I really want your endorsement. And she said, Obama, I will give you my endorsement if you come to my hometown of Greenwood, South Carolina. So I must have had a glass of wine or something, because right away I just said, okay, I'm coming. And come to find out that Greenwood is an hour and a half away from every place else. So I fly in to Greenwood the next time, or I fly into South Carolina about a month later. And we land in Greenville, and it's late. I've been campaigning for 2 weeks straight. I'm exhausted. I'm staggering to my hotel room about 12:30 at night. My staff taps me on the shoulder. They say, "Senator," I said, "What?" They said, "You've got to be in the car at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning." I said, "Why?" They said, "Because we've got to go to Greenwood, South Carolina like you promised." I said, "Okay." Next morning, alarm clock goes off. Oh, I'm just beat. I stagger out of bed. I pull the drapes open in the hotel room. It's a miserable day, pouring down rain. I get some coffee. I open up the newspaper. There's a bad story about me in the New York Times. I pack my bags. I go downstairs. My umbrella blows open, and I get soaked. I get drenched. So now I'm wet, I'm mad, and I'm sleepy. And we start driving. We drive. Finally, we get to Greenwood. Although you don't know you're in Greenwood right away. There aren't a lot of big buildings around Greenwood. It's a lot of fields and woods. That's why they call it Greenwood. And then there's a park, and we pull alongside. There's a little building. We go inside the building, and lo and behold, after this long drive, there are only 20 people there. 20 people. And they all look kind of wet. And not that happy, like maybe, you know, they're not that thrilled to be there. But, you know, we've learned that every vote counts, even 20 people. I'm running for president, so I go and I start shaking hands, saying hello to everybody. How do you do? What do you do? Suddenly we hear this voice behind me. "Fired up!" And just like that, the folks in Greenwood, these 20 people, they all say, "Fired up." Then we hear this voice say, "Ready to go!" And suddenly we hear these 20 people all say, "Ready to go." Some folks have heard this story. And I don't know what's going on, so I turn around, and there's this little woman there, about 5'3". She's got an outfit, got a big church hat. She's about 65 years old. She's smiling right at me. She says, "Fired up!" Turns out she's a city councilwoman from Greenwood that's famous for her chant. She's been doing this for years. They call her the chant lady. She's very proud of it. And so for the next 5 minutes, she just keeps on chanting, "Fired up." Everybody says, "Fired up," "Ready to go." Everybody says, "Ready to go." And I don't know what to do. I mean, I thought I was going to be the center of attention. I'm a presidential candidate coming to Greenwood, population 3,000. I'm being upstaged. So I'm standing there, and my staff shrugs their shoulders. But here's the thing, St. Louis. After about a minute or two, I'm feeling kind of fired up. I feel like I'm ready to go. And so I started joining in the chant, and it makes me feel good. And for the rest of the day, every time I saw my staff, even after we left Greenwood, I'd say, "Are you fired up?" And they'd point to me and they'd say, "I'm ready to go, boss." Which just goes to show you how one voice can change a room. And if one voice can change a room, it can change a city. And if it can change a city, it can change a state. And if it can change a state, it can change a nation. And if it can change a nation, it can change the world. Your voice can change the world. So I want to know, St. Louis, are you fired up?
Ready to go!
Ready to go?
Ready to go!
Fired up?
Fired up!
Ready to go?
Ready to go!
Fired up?
Fired up!
Ready to go?
Ready to go!
Let's go change the world.